Okay, let's get started. So thank you everyone for taking the time to join today's session. Hopefully you've had a chance to join the other Mentor Mondays sessions. I know I have, and I found them super interesting. So the bar has been raised really high for these sessions. So I'm just hoping that I can, keep up the momentum and keep everyone with me as we go through this. So I think one thing is, as Fatima mentioned, let's try to keep it as interactive as possible. So feel free to drop your comments in the chat box and drop your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll monitor that as we go through today's session. What I would like to share with you today is a little bit about my career background and journey. How I've sort of progressed through the financial services industry, and also share with you a few tips if you're an entrepreneur looking to partner with a large organization. One of the comments that I've heard from mentoring entrepreneurs as part of my job is that they might find it difficult to navigate a large organization. How do you get your foot in the door? How do you get to the right stakeholder? How do you make a successful partnership? So I'll share a few tips that I've learned along the way with working with startups and other partners. All right, so I wanted to start with a quote from Steve Jobs, not because it's cool and trendy to quote Steve Jobs, but there's a couple of reasons why this resonated with me. One is Apple really sparked my curiosity and my interest in technology and innovation from a young age. So I don't want to date myself, but I got my first Apple computer when I was maybe around 10 or 11 years old, which now, of course, that would be fairly late in life to start, using mobile devices and computers. But at that time, it wasn't as common as it is today. But that really kind of set me on a path to learning more about technology and about computers and about the power of innovation. And, I've kind of continued that journey along with, all of the different Apple devices that I've had throughout my life, from computers to mobile devices to music devices, to now connected home devices. So that journey with Apple still continues. And secondly, this quote that he used in his commencement address at Stanford has really stuck with me for a long time, about not being able to connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So for me, what this means is your passion really drives what your purpose is. And though your passion may drive you into different directions along your journey, it will always connect back to your core purpose. So figuring out what that core purpose is essential to really being successful with your future. It's not just about doing what you love, although, that's great, but doing what you love, that adds value to your clients and to your community and, in your personal and your professional life, and being able to connect the passion with the purpose is super important. So kind of to bring this to life to you, how this is played out in my personal and professional life. I've had a long career of education and experience. So I guess starting back to the point where I had my first Apple computer, though I started out playing games, I then quickly became interested in programming and learning the different programming languages, and how you could actually use words and commands to create something new and create something that actually meant something to someone. That's what really kind of sparked my interest in technology. So I guess when I sort of started in my educational career in the later, maybe when I was 16 or 17, I started learning different programming languages, which, by the way, are no longer in existence. But the point is that, that sort of helped to shape where I would actually go into the future. But then I sort of pivoted when I was, a little bit, thinking about what I wanted my career to be. I pivoted a little bit into the music industry and became a concert pianist when I was, I guess, 16, 17, 18. And I thought that was going to be my career. After, programming, I moved into, wanting to be a pianist or a music teacher. And then, that kind of translated into following another passion of mine, which is writing and communications. So I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in journalism with a specialization in political science because I actually wanted to be a sort of government reporter or news reporter. So that was how that translated. And then actually when I got into the working world, I realized how little money journalists make. So I ended up pivoting again back to working for a financial services company just on a part-time basis, on a sort of contract basis. And, I just sort of stuck with it. And then I ended up continuing my education to get my MBA with a focus in technology management. So you can see how it's not really a straight line path that I have represented here. It's more like a winding sort of journey. But then going into my work experience, I, started out in the US. I'm American, if you can't tell from my accent. So I started out sort of falling into the data and analytics field, working on analyzing data and migrating data from one system to another within financial services companies. So that's what I did for the early part of my career. I started managing projects that were related to data and analytics. And then once I joined Hsbc, I started managing projects that were related to data and analytics. And luckily, or fortunately for me, that took me outside of the US to work in different places around the group. So one of the things that I like most about working with Hsbc is the international experience that you get and the opportunity to work with different cultures and to work in different places. So I spent a few years working in Hong Kong. I spent some time working in India. And then I've been here in the UAE for the last 7 years. So from my project management experience, I then moved on to managing finances and doing budget management and headcount management. And then I sort of worked my way into developing the strategy for technology for the region, and then also adding in a bit of my communications experience. So making sure that the messaging was clear about what technology was doing and how it was impacting the bank. So that's something that's super important to me, is sharing the messages about how technology is changing the future of banking, which then led into my current role as the head of innovation for the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey. So what does that actually mean, that role? It's really about both the internal side of innovation. So how do we harness the great ideas from our staff and, get people in the right mindset to think what's possible into the future, and what do our customers actually need for the future, and how do we make that happen? I think if you talk about large organizations such as Hsbc that have been around for more than 150 years, though we have been innovating along that whole journey of our corporate history, there can be a tendency to get kind of stuck in your day-to-day responsibilities. And so one of the things that I try to do is get people out of that, static mindset and think about, what are other people doing in this field? So look up and outside the organization and see what are the trends that are happening? What are the technologies that are impacting banking? Where is banking going into the future? What do our customers truly want from us? And so that internal side of innovation and building new products and services that add value for our customers is one part of it. And the other part of it is working with external partners, such as fintechs, big tech, other partners, government entities, universities, regulators, who will help us to develop those products and to help us to get to the next generation of banking. So how do we make those successful partnerships work? So that's kind of a quick overview of what do I do. And the reason why I mention this, not to tell you my whole life story, but to again go back to connecting my passion with my purpose. So while my passions have kind of, you know, veered here and there, my core purpose is really around helping others and helping others to be successful, whether that's entrepreneurs in the bank that want to do something different and want to create new experiences for our customers, whether it's mentoring staff within the bank or people within my professional community. Whether it's education is super important to me. How do we leverage the skills that we need for the future, and how do we get people to the right level that they're actually being the best version of themselves and contributing the most that they can back to their organization or their community. That's super important to me. And then lastly is getting involved in environmental and social impact startups and the community of interest around solving ESG issues. So I do participate with a number of programs within the bank where we accelerate social impact startups and help those startups to better define their purpose and to capitalize on the opportunities that are available to them and measure the impact that they're having in the ecosystem. So, you know, overall, I would say my passions in technology and in communications have really shaped what my purpose is throughout my career. So secondly, I wanted to go over some of the top tips that I've learned across my journey in innovation and partnership with the bank. So as I mentioned, some of the startups that I work with find it difficult to navigate that corporate environment to get to the right person. How do you sell in the right way to create a successful partnership with a large organization? So here are a few of the tips that I'd like to share. Firstly, it's not all about the tech. Though I come from a technology background and I'm super passionate about technology, it's actually not about the technology. So, you know, if you go into a meeting with a potential stakeholder and you show an architecture diagram of how your platform work and what software you're using and what technologies you're using, it could, you know, sort of not land the right message. So try to avoid, using buzzwords just for the sake of it. You might actually have the best blockchain solution in the world. You might have the most advanced AI machine learning algorithms out of everybody in the world, but you know, that's not what sells products. What sells products is actually addressing a customer need and creating value both for you and for the stakeholder that you're working with. So I would say, you know, try to keep your pitch very simple. Try to, stay with the storyline of who you are as an entrepreneur. What is your passion? Why are you passionate about solving this particular problem in the industry? And what would it mean for the industry if this problem was solved? I think that's the biggest thing that really lands with people, is they relate to your personal story. So try to keep your pitch very aligned with who you are as a person and why you want to solve this particular problem, rather than just focusing on the technology element of it. And then also lastly, what's in it for me? So think about, try to put yourself in their shoes. What is it that they're really looking for? Does your solution actually solve their problem? So while you might have a fantastic solution, it may not be right for that particular stakeholder. And I think it's important to recognize that. And potentially you can pivot your solution to meet the needs of what your stakeholder is looking for. So so just thinking about what's in it both for both sides of the table. What's in it for you? What's in it for your stakeholder? And make that your pitch and your story. Secondly, focusing on the impact. So going back to the basics of innovation. Innovation is not just creating a great product, but creating a great product that adds value to your stakeholders. So, keeping that in mind and, just making sure that you're focusing on what is the impact. One of the questions that I like to ask when we have innovation events or hackathons in the bank is, if you had $1 billion to solve this problem, how would you solve it? Would you be implementing the solution that you have? Would you change it if you had $1 billion to solve it? And I think that kind of big thinking is what I find particularly rewarding with working with entrepreneurs is, they do have that, that big thinking. And that's what we need to bring into large organizations is that mesh of fresh, independent thinking along with, identifying what the real pain points and problems are that we can solve together. And then secondly, to start small and think big. So, don't go into a relationship with a bank thinking that they're going to turn over all of their customer data to you, or, you're going to completely change the process within the bank. That's a very long journey to follow, but what is the cheapest, smallest thing that you can create that actually shows your value of what your solution can do? Whether it's, going to a branch and talking to customers about whether your solution is actually suitable for their needs. Would they be interested in that type of a solution? Maybe it's just a conversation, not a full-blown, proof of concept where you develop something together with your stakeholder. So just think about what is the smallest thing that can add value. Another thing you can think about is how can you potentially help your stakeholder aside from just the pure sales business opportunity? So are there any, is there any informational sessions that you can share with staff in the bank, for example, that would help the customer and also get your name out there? Is there a workshop that you can do on your particular area of technology or about your product? If you're, for instance, working in cryptocurrency, is there an education element that you can offer to your client to help them and also to help you get your name out there? So that's another suggestion, just to help to form that relationship with your stakeholder. And then thirdly is to avoid the yes, but. So this is something that happens very frequently is, you might do a proof of concept, and at the end of the proof of concept, while the stakeholder really likes your solution, they're unable to sort of clarify how to move forward to the next step of actually full implementation of the product. The one suggestion I have on this is to make sure that you're very clear on what the success metrics are. So if you're developing a proof of concept, what is the success criteria that will move you to the next step? So if it's if your problem statement is reducing loan defaults, if your metric is, I will help you to reduce loan defaults by 20%, for example, make that your success metric. If you meet that success metric of 20% in your proof of concept, then the decision is much easier to say, I've met your criteria, let's go on to the next step. So just be sure about, what the specific metrics are that you're tracking to help that decision progress to the next stage. And then thirdly is knowing your customer. So, working with a large organization is not necessarily like a quick, sign a contract and you're done, which anybody who has worked with a large organization would know the procurement process can take a while. and getting to the right stakeholder and getting the right approvals to move forward can be time consuming. So just make sure that you're aware of that going in. I've talked to many startups who say, oh, I can implement my solution in 2 weeks. And, I always kind of laugh at that because I think there's absolutely no way that's going to happen in a large organization. So just be prepared for that going in, that you're in it for the long haul. Go into it with the mindset of creating a long-term relationship. Think about it like going into a marriage. You don't just like right off the bat, say, let's get married and merge all of our, assets together and everything. You sort of take it step by step, get to know each other, go on a few dates together maybe, and, get to know each other before you actually move into the long-term part of the relationship. So take that time and go into it with your eyes wide open, I'd say. Secondly, it's really important to find a broker within the bank. So I see my role really as a connector between external partners and connecting them with the right stakeholder in the bank. And finding this kind of a person within a large organization is super important. Because, while that's not necessarily who you're going to be selling to at the end of the day, that person can help you to make the right connections to move your proposition to the next level. So look for those kind of people. Avoid the spray and pray, as we say, reaching out to absolutely everyone that you can find on LinkedIn. At a particular organization that you're targeting. I don't know, you can let me know if you find that successful. I haven't found that to be successful in the past. And targeting who is the right customer that you actually want to link in with and focusing your efforts on that particular segment of the business or area of the business that you want to target is super important. And so finding that connector sort of person in an organization can really help to solidify that relationship. And then also when you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn or on email or, over the phone, don't just go in, with a sales pitch. Go in with a point of view and a specific agenda. So again, back to the cryptocurrency, if that's, part of your product, have a conversation with someone in the bank about, what do you think about this? This is something that I've been thinking about. Here's kind of what I'm thinking in terms of my product and how it's shaping up. What do you think about this? How is this impacting your industry? Just have that open conversation first before you get to, jumping right into the sales pitch. Thirdly is to walk in your customer's shoes. As I mentioned before, think about it from their perspective. If you were that person, what would you be looking for from a potential partner? And then sort of work at it that way, and that's how it can be successful to have a two-way sort of partnership. It's not just about you selling to them. It's what can they provide you? What can you provide them in return that adds value? And then answer the tough questions. I find when I meet with startups, sometimes they don't take the opportunity to ask enough questions. And it's an open conversation, right? If you want to ask, if your product is in the onboarding journey, for example, in fintech, how does your onboarding journey work today? Walk me through the steps of it. Maybe you want to talk to somebody in the front line that's working in a branch or working in the call center or is a relationship manager in the bank. Maybe you want to ask to have a conversation with them to talk through what are their actual pain points and how your solution might be able to address them. So do your homework, do your due diligence, get to the right questions. If you have an onboarding journey, maybe you open an account with that bank so that you can see for yourself how the onboarding experience is. And then you have a much better frame of reference to go to your customer and say, look, I've opened an account. Here are some of the opportunities that I can see, and here's how my solution would fit into that journey. And that's a much easier conversation than just going in and saying, I have the solution. Are you interested or are you not? You know, so yeah, take the time to do your research and get all of your questions answered. And it's okay if you know they don't have the answer and you need to set up a follow-up call to talk about it or to connect you with someone else in the bank that might have answers to those type of questions. And then lastly, make sure that you ask for what you want. This is very important. So at the end of your conversation with your stakeholder, what is it that you're looking for? So one of the things that we do in HSBC is we have a every other week connection with startups called Meet HSBC. And people from across the different geographies in the bank, from Asia to Europe to Americas, Latin America, Middle East, everyone is able to join those calls where startup companies give their pitch, and then we always ask them at the end of their pitch, what is it that you want from us? Do you want to make a connection with someone in the bank? Is there a particular market that you're targeting to expand to that we can help you to navigate that? Are there questions about regulations and how that plays out in the business that you would be helpful for you to answer? Do you want to know more about the market dynamics and you know, what the bank's strategy is and how your solution can help to address the strategic priorities? Do you want to, you know, have a conversation with someone in the sustainability team about how, you know, what the impact of your solution could be on the environment? You know, whatever it is, just make sure that you make that clear in your conversations and ask for what you want. The only thing that they can say is no, which I haven't really seen that, you know, be the case unless you're asking, you know, can you turn over your data to me, which obviously that's not going to happen right off the bat. But, you know, generally people are willing to listen and willing to try to accommodate whatever it is that you're looking for. And, you know, I think within banking, you know, fintech is sort of relatively new, although, you know, now it's been around for a few years. But, you know, we're at the point where, you know, we realize nobody can build everything. So we need that ecosystem of partners to really help us to create the best value for our customers. And really going back to the core purpose of why does a bank exist and what do our customers actually want from us is super important. So coming back to my point on passion leading to purpose, for example, HSBC's purpose is opening up a world of opportunities. What that means to me is, you know, what our customers are looking for is to send their child to university, to maybe buy their first home, to buy a car, to live life to the fullest, to travel, to experience things in life, to plan for their future, to you know, be comfortable in retirement. This is the core purpose that really resonates with our customers. So how do we make that happen in the best way possible? And how do we work together with our partner ecosystem to actually, you know, make better products and better services for our customers? That's really what we want at the end of the day. So coming to how can I help you? So I'm here to help. I'm part of this mentorship program because I want to give back to the community, and you know, I find it super interesting to meet, you know, people who are working on different things within financial services. So I'm happy to have a conversation with you, to make connections. If you know, I have connections in my network or you have connections in your network that might be valuable for either one of us. If you want to validate a use case, if you are, you know, sort of at the MVP stage with your business and you want to, you know, sort of trial that out with a customer to say, is this something that really resonates as a problem for you? I'm happy to talk through that, to listen to your pitch and give you feedback on, you know, what I think you might be able to change. And on the other hand, I'm happy to receive feedback as well. there are things that all of us have as strengths and weaknesses, and the best thing is to help each other. So feel free to reach out to me, and happy to, I guess, now take any questions that you might have. So if you want to drop any questions into the Q&A, or you want to, I guess, Fatima, people can come off of mute and ask their question.
Yeah, they can raise their hand, and after that, we can ask them to unmute.
Okay, so yeah, feel free to ask any of your questions, or raise your hand. We have Sachin.
Hi, Pam.
Hi, Sachin.
The question is really from the perspective of licensing. I think a lot of time what fintechs struggle with is not so much the capability per se, but to be able to actually play in the fintech space, we need to partner with a bank to leverage their license, which is not a very good way to put it, but I think you get my drift. So for example, if I want to, as a fintech, roll out a lending product, for example, and I understand how it's done, I understand the processing, I understand my customers, I understand how to reach those customers, but obviously I can't lend because I'm not a bank. Is that something that that is supported within HSBC?
It is in certain areas of the bank. I think it's something that's relatively new in terms of partnership, but we do recognize that there are benefits to that kind of a model. I think what's most important, if you're going about that conversation, is to really identify what is the business model, what's in it for you, what's in it for the bank, and how would the financials of that work. So I guess coming back to the business case of it,
Yeah, sorry. So in terms of what is in it for the bank, I think it's really utilization of installed capacity. So we are looking for risk as a service, compliance as a service, which the bank itself has installed capacity, will not need to add resources to deliver that. And obviously, we will also help utilize the liability book of the bank, so the lending will be off your book. Just continuing on the lending example, I often find that stuff like this gets stuck at compliance, even though it is the bank's compliance that will be doing all the monitoring.
Yeah.
So I just want to know, have you done something like this in some parts of the world?
In some parts of the organization, yes, we have. Okay. But again, I think it's something that's relatively new. It is something that we're looking at doing. But it really depends on what is the use case and what is the value add. But it is something that's possible.
Okay, great. So if you've done it somewhere else, then maybe there is a model that we can look to for inspiration. So thanks for that, Pam. I'll drop you a note offline if that's fine.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Amin.
Yeah. Hi, Pamela.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks. You mentioned about hosting hackathons, if I'm not mistaken. So how can we get invited or participate in such? Like, is there like something we can subscribe to, or is there like a website, or so we are up to date with these events?
Yeah. So I think most of the hackathons that we've done so far are mostly internal events, but one thing that we are looking at doing is creating an API sandbox that could be the link between connecting external parties with using our published APIs to create new solutions for the bank. And so that kind of event is something that we're looking at doing in the coming months. So that's, if you want to reach out to me, we can have a conversation offline, but that is something that we're looking at doing. Is that something that you've done in the past?
No, actually, but it sounds very interesting. And, being in the fintech space, I think, something that we can definitely look at.
Great. What kind of business do you have?
Actually, we provide solutions for mainly financial institution about customer engagement. And what does that mean? It's basically actually the full journey for customer engagement that starts from the digital onboarding, identification, and then the customer servicing, sales and marketing, as well as leveraging the data for the customers in order to provide the next best offer. So it's full, a full customer engagement journey that really helps to make the interaction between the banks and the customer more pleasant and more personalized.
Okay, what do you think is the best way to connect with customers?
Now it's all about being digital first. So something that is over the mobile, I think it's people will like it more, especially when you talk about the Z generation or Y generation. I think people who are I would say their attention is less than 10 seconds. I think they will like something that is easy, quick, and doesn't really require so much of papers and procedures and all this stuff. So anything that really helped to translate into digital experience with the seamless experience, that's I think this is the new way going forward.
Yeah.
And that's actually part of our solution that try to implement within our company.
Great. Yeah, I think so. On that point, one of our recent hackathons was with the technology graduates in the bank. So the people who are just fresh out of university, which I found super interesting to hear. What are their ideas of how they want to interact with the bank into the future. So we focused on problem statements around Gen Z and how they want to interact with the bank. So there were so many interesting ideas that came out in terms of, integrating banking with video gaming and with, multimedia experiences. And, I think there's a lot of opportunity in that kind of area, linking industries that you wouldn't necessarily think of with banking. That's something that I'm really interested in looking more into.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Maurice.
Hi, Pamela. How are you? Very nice to meet you virtually. Well done. I was very interested or nicely presented also on the background. Pamela, I was curious to learn a little bit more about the ESG entrepreneurship in your slide. Could you elaborate a little bit more on how that works? I particularly have an interest in the green bond. We're building a center of excellence, and I would like to explore that avenue with you, but with a link to education and a link to fintech. But I'll take that offline. But I'm just curious to see a little bit more how the entrepreneurship ESG works.
Yeah. So there's actually a few programs that we have in progress at the moment. One is led by C3 within the region. So we help to sponsor a social impact accelerator that's focused on startups that are solving one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we take them through I think it's around a 12-week program where we give them the education on how do you build your business, how do you measure your impact on the sustainable development goal that you're focused on, and then connecting them with investors and mentors who can help them to shape their proposition. So that's one of the exciting programs that we have in progress. We also do a couple of student programs that are also focused on solving UN Sustainable Development Goals, where we invite students to submit their ideas, and then we help them to shape their ideas and then reward them at the end, at the top ideas at the end.
Very interesting. Would be very delighted to be part of the program, and I'll reach out to you separately on a different occasion. Thank you for that.
Great. Okay, we have a couple of questions in the Q&A box, so maybe I'll go to those next. Uriel asked, sometimes it's not always easy to get to the right department, potential buy persona within the organization. Can the innovation department be of help for that? Absolutely. As I was mentioning, I think that's one of the things that I do help the bank with today is connecting entrepreneurs and startups with the right department of where their solution might be able to fit in. And I agree, it can be a challenge, especially when you look at people's job titles on LinkedIn. It doesn't necessarily, you don't really know what the person does sometimes. So, you know, getting to that right person who can help to take your idea forward can be challenging. So again, it's important to find people within the organization who can make those connections for you. So absolutely, I think that's the right approach to go after. And for me, yeah, that's the innovation department. It is helping to make those connections. Secondly, we have a question from Andreas. Financial services in general is intangible. You hardly get a patent on it. Hsbc is a big bank. How is the fintech's IP protected if the fintech is proposing a new business concept to you? Great question. We do have part of our legal department that specifically focuses on IP. And within the global innovation function, we specifically do focus on IP, both what we're creating internally and what we're creating together with our other partners, and how that's protected on both sides. So if we're working with a fintech and helping to shape their proposition, and we're co-creating a solution together, we absolutely, that's one of the things that we look at is how do we make sure that the IP is protected on both sides. The next
would you like to take more of the questions from the people that have raised their hands?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
Hi, Chandrasekhar.
Hi, Pam. So it's been really nice listening to what you were saying. It's very enlightening, and I think that for a startup, it's really invaluable. I had a small question for you. On the technology space, I know that Hsbc is heavily there in itself, without even the external vendors being there, because of the technology centers and the other companies, because I'm working for a company which has the capabilities in AR, VR, MR, AI, RPA, and all that. But to go ahead with the projects here, one of the assignments to me was to identify the real desk problem areas. So I'll just explain that in one line, that what it means is, in the larger scenario, I know that the projects would reach you and then you will deal with the fintechs. But sometimes there are internal burning problems, issues, which are really at a very small level. And people are struggling at their own level, and they do not have that kind of vision of the larger picture. So to solve those problems and few of the issues that people are grappling with at various affairs, can you project those as sort of assignments to the startups, or put them as a challenge and just wait for what they come to you with? Because a lot of tools are in common now. So whatever the bank uses elsewhere, people are using. And I know that it can be frustrating for people struggling at one point in their processes, where if they get a quick solution, they can do it on their own. And they can be enabled to do that. Maybe the bank may not have specific person to do all that. But I always felt that if there is one guide or one SME, subject matter expert or a technology wing, where you can reach out at any point and tell them that in my day-to-day working, this is my problem area. Can you help me solve it?
Yeah.
So small things, if you could give, because I have a team in Canada and Malaysia, which are working only on technology, but they are, again, as you said, the big products they have done, and they are, putting those technology things rather than understanding what the real, problem areas typical are. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, technologies like RPA can definitely help in certain areas with that, especially if you talk about, processes in the back office and operations and in risk and in compliance and technology. There is scope for that. One of the things that we do within the bank, we have an ideation platform that's used across different lines of business where, any employee can log their specific issue into that system, and then it kind of creates the trending and creates a path for success for that particular idea. So if we see, the same kind of issues coming up over and over and over that people are struggling with a particular area, then then we know we need to direct resources to that specific problem. So it helps to aggregate that data across what people are finding really challenging. And then I think it's a matter of identifying what is the right channel to solve that problem. So I think it comes back to what are the core capabilities that we have within the bank, where can we solve our own problems, and where do we need to engage another partner that might be able to solve that quicker or cheaper or in a better way than we can. So it's really about finding that right balance between, leveraging our core capabilities and leveraging our external partners to get to the right result. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Pamela, that's a good answer. I am satisfied. And on the other side, just a very small thing. You said that you can research on yourself. So just a small thing I observed, and I thought I'll give it to you, that when I came over to Middle East as a customer, I went to 2-3 Hsbc support centers here just to ask them that I want to have an account here. And I found that they do not recognize the Indian account or any other country account. And the SIN number does not tell them anything about the customer onboarding. So I just told them that because it's a multinational bank, you should have some way that you can recognize at least what's the customer relationship. Because I see a gap. There can be a switcher because the other person standing right next to you would welcome you. And if you feel your own bank is, treating you as an outsider, doesn't recognize your, because it's a different entity.
Yeah.
So that was one. But rightly, the path you have suggested is to explore by, through the customer zone. You experience it, you find out what is not exactly, you think where is the area of opportunity, and you can highlight.
Yeah, for sure. What you mentioned is one of the key challenges that any international bank really has. There are restrictions on sharing data across borders that are, being navigated at the moment. But that's one of the challenges, is how do we actually port data from one country to another? If there was something, for example, like a universal credit score, where I'm coming from the US, I'm coming into the UAE, they know what my credit history is and they can assess. credit worthiness based on my past history in whatever country I've lived in, that would be extremely valuable. Today, unfortunately, that's not something that's feasible, but that's a great problem to solve if you have a solution for that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Fatima, any other questions that we have from people raising their hands, or should I go back to the Q&A?
I can see one more hand raised, but I think that you might have answered this question in the Q&A box. So I think you can go ahead with the rest of the questions.
Okay. So the next question I can see is, if we're a fintech startup and we want to establish a business partnership with Hsbc, what should we do and what is the procedure? So first of all, as I mentioned, identify who is your target customer, what is your solution, and what is the right area that you would want to sell to. If you know, you're welcome to reach out to me and I can help to make a connection for you. We also have, as I mentioned, the Meet Hsbc sessions that take place every other week that I could invite you to present. And that gives you an opportunity to present to multiple, you know, stakeholders within the bank, and then see, you know, where the right match might be. So that's a couple of things that I might recommend on that. Question from Ricky: does the bank have preferential filters for promoting fintechs to lend to them or forge partnerships, for example, who have a strong social impact, circular economy kind of mandate in their business model? Ricky here from North Ladder: we have built an auction-driven secondhand marketplace which facilitates access to quick cash against personal items. What we typically do, so as I mentioned, we have a couple of social impact programs. So we you know, invite applications for those programs, and then we you know, assess and select the fintechs that apply to that program. So if you want to contact me, I can give you more information about that. In terms of lending, so it depends on our, you know, risk appetite and risk criteria for who we lend to. We do have minimum criteria of the annual turnover that you have, along with other criteria for how we assess different opportunities for lending. But we are, you know, super interested in the sustainable finance area and promoting businesses in that area. We also have another program called Living Business that's also related to solving environmental and social issues. So I can provide you some more information about that offline. Okay, question from Kazim.
Pamela, I think that Kazim has reworded his question. You can see in the bottom he's reworded it. Okay. So I would read the second one.
Sure. Okay. Speculative trading accounts for the majority of crypto asset use cases. This has resulted in a volatile asset class that creates risk for investors at all levels. What is the banking industry's stance on this? I can't really comment publicly on what is, you know, the bank's position on this. I can only comment from my own personal experience. There is a lot of effort going on within the bank to explore cryptocurrency, CBDCs, and these, you know, new technologies that are coming out, and looking at what are the opportunities in that space. So unfortunately, that's about all I can say about that for the moment, about what our public stance on that is. The last question: what is the best way to connect with me? So I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to look me up on LinkedIn to connect with me. I don't know, Fatima, if you share the slides after, but I had my email address is there. If you'd like to directly email me as well, happy to have a conversation with anybody from the call. If you know, are interested in having a mentor relationship, I'm happy to give you any advice that I can, or you know, talk about what your particular needs are and whether I can help with that.
Pamela, do you want to drop your email in the chat box? I can see some people there also asking for your email. I think they might have missed it on the slide. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, so another question, Fatima, maybe this is for you about how to get recordings for the Mentor Monday sessions.
Sure. So we are recording this session anyway. We're still in the process of possibly uploading it onto our YouTube. So just keep an eye out for that page.
Sure.
Okay, Pamela, I think you've answered all of them.
Yep, I think so. If there's nothing else, then I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today's session. It's really great to interact with you and looking forward to participating in more events and interacting with you in the future.